Assalamu alaikum, Gambia, friends of the Gambia, listeners and viewers. Good afternoon, good morning, and good morning wherever you might be in this on this universe. Today is April 2nd, 2024. And the time here is 5 minutes past 12 p.m. on this Tuesday afternoon. And I believe in the Gambia it would be 5 minutes past 7 p.m. on this Tuesday evening or night. Today the topic of discussion would center around things that we need to know or do when we are confronted with law enforcement officers, which means the police by and large, in either traffic stops, random checks, emergency situations, and also when a law enforcement officer arrests you, things that you need to do. Most importantly, those that are in the diaspora, whether you are in Europe, you are in Scandinavia, or you are in the Americas, as I am living. So basically, my name is Essa ABC, United States of America. This topic of this discussion is very, very important to our lives. Because whatever you do as a person, when you have a dealing with law enforcement officers, you need to be very, very calm. Make sure you speak clearly, concise, and very precisely. Answer questions straightforward. And make sure that you answer everything that law enforcement officers ask you with respect and dignity. Because make no mistake, anything other than that, that could cause a lot of bad things happening to you, basically. Because we have seen in the diaspora, so many people lose their life basically because of they do not know what to do when they are confronted with law enforcement officers. And by and large, if you are arrested or you are stopped or they receive a call regarding something that might be going on and law enforcement officers responded to that scene, you as the subject should do anything but being very belligerent or being very non-compliant to the law enforcement officers. Law enforcement officers, they differ in their way of operations because we can see some of them know how to de-escalate situations and make sure that, they get the person out of the crisis situation that they are going on without firing a shot at them. So we as a people, like I said, living in the diaspora, we have to be very, very careful. Very, very careful. In the sense that these law enforcement officers, because of the nature of the geopolitical nature of where we live, whether you live in Germany, in Europe, Scandinavia, or in the Americas here, all of these law enforcement officers are trained in handling difficult situations under difficult circumstances. And we as a people must sometimes understand the value and essence of how these police officers do their job. They are very professional. Unlike the police officers who we have in Africa, some of them are professional also in Africa, But these ones that do their job here are under proper scrutiny to make sure that they respect the life and liberty and dignity of the humankind, to make sure that they treat you with respect, and make sure that they read to you your rights as a person. If you are stopped, like I said, you should not do anything stupid out of the ordinary. Because this topic of discussion that I'm going to be making here today, it would be centered around the fact that, you know, a young Gambian man, a young youth, a Gambian migrant living in Germany, Nuremberg, as it claimed to be, who appeared to be later identified as 𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏, has a confrontation with police officers in Germany. The little information we gathered was that he threatened his girlfriend with a knife, and a domestic violence call was made to the German Polizei. And when the Polizei got to the scene of this incident, so the Gambian youth, which is 𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏, was not able to control himself because he has a weapon at hand. And like I said, those circumstances are very, very difficult split-second decisions. When police officers, more than 1, 2, 3, up to 4 police officers come by to take you or talk to you regarding those kind of issues, you as a person should not do anything but comply, because basically your life depends on it. And your survival would also depend on what you do. There are police officers who may think outside the box and see that the use of force continuum, which I'm going to discuss here later in the discussion, would be exercised. The proportionability and the appropriateness and the reasonability of what they ended up using, the use of force, which is the last resort, as using the firearm to kill somebody. So, in many instances, like if somebody has a stick in their hand and they are charging at you, you being the police officer, would that warrant you to shoot at that person with a stick, looking at the size of the stick? And also, what could you have done probably to prevent that? So that is where the proportionability and the reasonability comes into play. To make sure that, does the police officer have a reasonable or probable cause to neutralize the threat that is being meted or advancing towards him or her? Like I said, these things are very complex and they are very diverse in nature. To treat them, it can be treated on case-by-case basis. So, in the instance where Mr. 𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏 was shot dead because he was charging at the police officer with a knife, there are so many implications here, because the police officer can argue that, okay, I got a call, I'm trying to go and respond to this domestic violence call, that somebody is threatening another person with a knife. So 2 lives are involved here. And most often police officers would do things sometimes right, but sometimes because they are so scared out of their pants, some of them would do an unthinkable and go to the last resort, which is the use of firearm. And in the use of force continuum, conventionally and globally anywhere in the world, you are being taught to tell the people to be able to characterize and try to gauge and measure the way and manner you deal with the people that you are addressing. So this use of force continuum needs to be played, Because when you look at the police officer has a lot of gadgets on their waist. And those gadgets are basically a baton. You have a paper spray. You also have what you call a taser. You have handcuffs. You have the firearm on you. And not only that, you have a camera that is on your chest as a police officer. Because I could remember in here, when I was a security manager in one of the cities here in the US, responsible for the whole unit that we provide security, we equally have all of these gadgets that the police have. But what we are taught was to say that we are not allowed to use the firearm until when our lives are threatened. So my life being threatened can have a different interpretation or meaning. Because, like I said, you have to look at the proportionability and the reasonability of what is coming towards you. As a person, or as a police officer responding to these issues. And like I said, for those who are listening or watching right now, I did mention what you need to do. Basically, when you are stopped at a traffic, you just have to remain calm, answer every question as truthful as possible, as much as you can, and do not be belligerent. Meaning, do not act out and try to be angry with the law enforcement officer, because these are people who have everything on their waist and they can deploy it on you based on the circumstances that you do while they stop you. Sometimes the police officers are very wrong in doing their operations. We have seen that time and time again, whether in the United States here, in Europe, or in the Scandinavia. But if a police officer stops you wrongly, you have your rights. But during that process of police stop, you need to exercise maximum patience, respect, diligence, and carefulness. Because if you do not, your life depends on it. Some of these police officers do not care. They will rain their pistol on you, and you may end up losing your life. So, you as a person, to save your life, to know that you have a family at home that think too much on you or think about you so highly, and you are responsible for a lot of hundreds, if not 200 or thousands of people whom you help on a daily basis. So that is why when we are faced with some of these problems, when we are faced with some of these problems, we do not have to be the hero. Just be calm. We know people get out of, they get very mad. But in this country, it's not like Africa where you would treat women anyhow you want. Because at the end of the day, if a woman calls police officers on you and they come to arrest you, you do not have to act like a hero. Because if you do, what may end up happening is two things. You may end up getting injured so bad, or you will be a dead body. So, fellow Gambians and friends of the Gambia, I am advising everybody, wherever you might be in this world, at least when you are in Europe, at least you have experienced 1 or 2 things, or even 10 times of police stopping you either for traffic, or they stop you because they suspected somebody who may look almost like you or just like you. Yet still, if you feel that your rights have been violated through those stops or illegal arrest, you have your right. The legal system is there. You can sue them. Here is not like Africa, because if the police mess up and treat you in a different way and manner, you can sue them and the due process would be served. So at the end of the day, be calm, be patient, be yourself, to know that this is just about a random check and the police officers would be there. They are not there to ascertain who is right or wrong. All what the police officers are there at that split second of a time is to make sure that they ensure safety of both individuals. That is you, the assailant, and also the victim who you are threatening. So at the end of the day, you continue doing something outside the box or differently, they may shoot you. And whenever we shoot, we are trained to shoot not to inflict pain, but to shoot to neutralize the suspect. Because whenever you shoot somebody, you cannot shoot them on their hand, or you cannot shoot their shoulder, you cannot shoot their feet, because that is in military or in service, that is traumatizing. If you do that, you will be held accountable for that. But when you shoot somebody, you aim at the center mass to make sure that you shoot to kill, not to shoot to injure, no. So there are instances and probabilities that would warrant somebody to take out the firearm. But then, like I said, the use of force continuum has taught us clearly as law enforcement officers to use the least possible force reasonable and possible at a time of an incident. I will discuss that more in depth when I go down to what I wanted to discuss here. But this is a general advice to everybody who lives in the diaspora. Whether you are in Finland, you are in Norway, you are in Germany, or you are in Holland, or Sweden, Switzerland, Spain, anywhere, or in this Americas where we have. Because the prevalence of gun in this country where I live is way more than anybody, anywhere in the world. In here in America, we own guns just like match, how you buy match from the shop. You know, but do we need all of these guns? Sometimes no. Sometimes we just use this gun for fun, to go for firing, to rain it on there. Some people might be stressed. They just go to the firing range and start shooting and shooting. Probably that gives them happiness or to relieve them. But like I said, what happened in Germany, it has a different interpretation to our brother, which is Lamin Touré. At the end of the day, what we are likely telling you, we are not trying to scrutinize who is right or wrong, but we as a person who has the experience in these services to tell you that when a police officer comes for you, you just not need to attack them. Attacking them conventionally anywhere in the world, if you attack a police officer, you will be killed. And that's the bottom line. You will be killed because police officers are not trained to kill, to injure. They are trained to shoot and neutralize the threat. And in this use of force continuum, if I were those police officers, I will look at few things, because if you use the last resort, which is the gun, you have to explain yourself at the court of law. There are legal implications as to why you use a gun to kill somebody. How many of you police officers were there? On the video I checked in Germany, it's about 5 or 4 police officers. So 5 or 4 police officers. Sometimes police officers are trained, if they see somebody who has a weapon or a knife or a gun, you as a police officer need to run away and take cover. Not meaning that you just want to stand by and let that person try to do whatever they want to do. But then at the end of the day, I mean, there would be a lot of legal implications there. But other people could have also argued on the side of the police officer to say that, oh, the subject has a weapon charging at me and a knife. When they stab me, I could die. So you have to look at the extremity the intent and the distance as to when that charging was happening at the time, how likely is Mr. Lamin Toure more likely to inflict pain to the police officer and maybe kill him? That is why the police officer deployed their gun and tried to shoot him about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullets in his chest. So it's a very cumbersome topic, in the sense that if we look at it at a different level, Mr. Lamin Toure, family members could look for a lawyer to say that, okay, the force that was applied on the subject was not, number one, reasonable. It was not proportionate, because proportionability means if I have a stick and you have a gun, that stick that I have, I'm charging at you, trying to hit you with that stick. So proportionability team would teach us that, is that stick more likely to kill you when I hit it on you? That would cause you to deploy the gun to neutralize me. So the lawyers at the court of law, they will look at all of these things. The size of the subject, which is Mr. Lamin Toure, may God have mercy on his soul, and the type of weapon that Mr. Lamin Toure has, they will look at that. How proportionate and how appropriate is that to be able to kill the police officer? Although we know there have been several police officers who have died on line of duty with a knife attack. But then, fellow Gambians and friends of the Gambia, this is a very serious thing. Like you and I's life depend on it. Police stop happens to so many other people. We have good police officers in this Europe, in America, in Scandinavia, and we do have also bad ones, just like we have them in the Gambia, in our country. So if we have all of these people with a diverse, different behavioral manifestations, we just need to be careful and look out for ourselves. The good thing is you just have to do right by yourself. If you know that you are innocent, you stop by police, don't be angry. Although we all have got angry with police officers when they stop you. Because sometimes they will stereotype and look at us as if, you know, we are bad guys or stuff. They look at a black person driving a very expensive car. Sometimes they will stop you simply because they want to find out who is in that car, you know, and then try to let you go. But if you feel your rights have been violated in that, you can just sue them to court. But if you act otherwise when you are being checked or somebody call for a domestic dispute or violence on you, the police officers, when they come very, very ready. And when they come, they are fully loaded because they are expecting an unexpected. Those police officers who respond to the scene, some of them could have otherwise been killed themselves. So that is why when they respond to emergency situation, they are very ready. And they do not joke for a second. And you, as an African youth or a Gambian person, you would do right by yourself by just comply. Comply with law enforcement. If your rights have been violated, you sue them to court later. But you do not want to be a hero, trying to act out and try to draw a weapon by attacking law enforcement officers. The sad news would be that you will be a dead body. In many instances, in many circumstances, nobody would want to go through that. We all came here in this Europe to look for greener pastures, to look for opportunity, to help our families and family members back home in Africa, in this case, the Gambia, to ensure that when we are doing those things, we do not expect to be killed by a gun, 5 or more bullets in our chest. At the end of the day, justice will prevail. Wherever the face of justice would go in favor of, I do not know. But in the very instance when you are stopped or being questioned by police, the wrong thing would be to attack them with a weapon, because they see that weapon as a the weapon as something that could be very detrimental to themselves. That's why they could kill you. So this would be a very big legal battle, and we will see what the law of appropriateness and proportionate and reasonability would teach as to whether the police officer acted wrongly by using wrong judgment in a split-second decision to jump from nowhere, because you need to utter a verbal command to say stop, stop, or lay down, drop your weapon and stuff like that. That is level 1, verbal command. Level 2, you can also deploy some other measures that are on your belt. Meaning, you can either tell the subject to drop the weapon down, or you use a paper spray on them, or you can use a paper spray or a taser. If all of those things did not work and you think that the threat is very imminent towards you, you can just neutralize them by using the firearm, which is the last resort. That is level 4 or 5. And nobody would want to use the last resort to try to neutralize the subject, unless when your life is at risk. So like I said, this is a warning and advice to share with you as African brothers, to make sure that we need to do the right thing, and saying that, you know, we comply with everything. It would not do any bad to us by sparing our time for law enforcement to come. Even if there are more than 10, they can come. But if you are clean, nothing would happen at the end of the day. So law enforcement officers are always very ready. Very, very ready. And we as a people need to be careful. Careful. So today, let us look at okay, Mbading Gambian Kolu, friends of the Gambia. My name is Essa ABC. Nadia mo jambi wala mo ning ite mari police officer ye encounter sort of for aye stop traffic oloto. Fodung aye stop dulala to miya lonko. Ite mari ebeje. Ye ilbe mole nyinen kambang inata ke ite stop. Wala teng ite mari ebe tuba budu janne enila sunkuto wala ela nomo nyoe problemo soto inata ka ye kumandiro ke police wala puri ye ne kam. Min nyanta ka ke o dulalto wala mnyenti ite mari nyanta ka isabarle. Ye famutaku. Ye kulo di police wala. Ye kumandiro minkela ye kumakangol jabi. A jabiro nyanta ka senea. A nyanta ka ketonyati. Ka make soko. Ete mari. E nyanta ka minkala muta nyenkuo be kono wala mnyenti ko. E la balu nya depends on it. Foibe balu lale wala foibe falale wo dependa wala ka. Andung. Ndolbe bota Afrika le nata janyim bankol to nata nyinindirola. O nyininndiro nyinko la fitale nin seita suo kono wala ten nin mbe seyla nin fense bo ta nin fensita suo kono mammin bondiji. But at the end of the day, yena aja wo condition sifa yebula kono lua yen karande minna wala munyente ko the use of force continuum a level or lel soto the highest level up to the lowest level. The highest level wala monte wala mukakido bondi ka mo bung ning ayatarete la life be depende wo kan kaje ko nima mari fa atebe falala ndolla America janga kidi jamal soto jang par wo kidol be luwa la sartol le bellaring maral nyal le balamia lonko nyanta ka use and police dung nia a teoto jube fensi fa jamal le ba teoto baton begele mi alonga dokomalem paper spray bije wala mo nyenkani jioti ika min fayi kan nia jube ko momi alon ko la fitaka arrest robe koleare wala mari be kelendi kanne ese paper spray faya kan pour ka disorientinde isa mutano nyamin ya karikanno wo fanande niemo ye paper spray faya kan amanda woto ite police o mi paper spray faya kan enyanta ka wo mari medical attention dia la kaje ate mari akana suffocate akana disorient fo asena saya soto ko wala se ni wo man soto no modol beje la ko ka kole abake puru ke kare hanno ke mutakuke ni be diamu kan wo dulato dol juso ka bo bakele so police officer se nyin levelol be use no le among kese bondi noje then as a tesa use tesa akamulun talako kido a tesa nyin ni a fayi kanten ate nin kurang le kata o kurang nyin na sotite balajato kona ake balo kris ndile amunta ko ibuka kuno puru polisol sina ye marano kuke o ku sifal fanam be ning ayatare ye oke dolla amang fenke akonye mambanno police officer dung ayaje komin ko nyinde hani bi abe walen kanne andunga jora min soto na futatanna ida abem fano la le naya lankan wala to police o sina kido bondi aye bon police o la kide bon adunde o masibolte because minka keje wala mnyente ko ye mobe karande minna police ya doku okono anin ami doku okono wala mnyente ko ebe bundiro kelale ye subject ko nye ya fa ya neutralize bari buka bon pour ka balaba wala tenka ka bunga singoto ya bunga a buloto ye oje nyaadi le wala munyente ko niye woke as a law enforcement officer munta ko loi be mutala nyaadi le wala mu imang hadamadi yala nyanto imala bunya diala katuko hadamadi ngate forra baba bake ni ba fale nyanta ka fale you aim at the center mass o center mass nyembekela munati ya dunde a sisi kuloto a jusoto ka fasi nyakele wala nyanta poliso be trenta wala nyama ngalon ne ko man sakunda be jubero ke kanja ate security doku o lonne bawonte nate be trenta Gambia la bari again berentanga doku ke jam when I was a security manager in Nyimbanko kan mbe maralin the whole regional or the whole area la Nyimbanko kan police ole min soto ntolka wala soto bari en karande minna wala munyente ko the last resort nyanta ka menke wala munyente ko kido bondo atena bondita imanyanka a sendi nyala miya lonko amambetea wala kende kido hanini ba training na dulato albe recruitment ibukala fiye kido tiling mola katun kido ate fortra bakela kuo dangerous ta bakela so kamala ko mi nganyel mil befo ning poliso yaje ko yenyin kuo min beke adiamutela da kolomola e manson ke e sabar ke la joram lande ay kuma kango befo pour asete ma ko ibe crisis situation o min kona e bondi woto bari man sabarino ina tay kamfata Kamfanyala, remember, mbenyen kuo mimbe foka mantara ka foka njamale bolota wala ten jamale mambolo. Mem foka polisol nito respond to daoda droika respond jele ka molu separate ye bondi nyo kono milia lonko ebe crisis situation okono. Wala mwete mote miye joraun chika eko ebe maybe ebe la muso fala wala ebe la sunkuto fala polisol nata kumandiro soto inate kang. Ni bina la komi ngafo. Mobuka pare wo tiwol nyam. Katu ikatara parere ne ya lonne ko itol polisol milkana odula itol fango niyo setuji. So nite man best judgment use for inate ye joraun chika diamute nyao nyai make ime sabari man kumol moy for sentano ye no iko ibe continue la dorong jama 9 out of 10 people will be ebe jurulale ye fadu. Bari dol beje police kendol dol fanam beje e kam munyo kele ya jube o mo nyinga joran sifale soto wala atina proportionality anata. The theory of proportionality mu minti wala mnyentiko. Okay. Ninga dokondingo ta wala te nimuro bembulu. Wo muro nyimfo. Wo be jare lale ba mimbeng ataka nanata na enso abem fano lala anin distant anin intent nyimbe nyadila. So wo proportionality benalale. Wala ken ni poliso nyinkuo be katara fenkera muta ku poliso kumo kono akake masingoleti. Atela decision making is very fast in such a way that what it do near decision or ta puro kakido use yena mo bungala amulunta ko you have to justify it. Mundalile ya kendi te yenymbunyen. Could you have done it a little bit differently? Walaten for mune a kendi ye wo deploy wo be after the fact near mo bung ekela kido fangote bulle ye orient ye samba briefing kajubeko because there are legal implications ning ayatare kido deploy. Ye kido deploy dawda haninima mofa. There are ramifications in the police sector in this country. Andunga nyanta kakira wala jama conventionally and globally. Bari, so mbewo mimfokang wala mnyentiko ning ayatare te mari sentano e noiman ne sabar. Ekoi ning jorang binakang polisol kang. Polisol mili alonko dolbi alonko they can be racist. Olbe jurulale so much so that fango ete ta mira la fangi, they will kill you in the most brutal manner. Even whereas se kudo kenole ke de-escalate. Ka de-escalation oke ka diamuye vavali ke cancel. Wala na police jamal fang bebe je nyimbanko kang. They have all gone through training of mental health aning training dolo ka make so coming ko ye vaval de-escalation oke mola poro momembe crisis situation okon ay boje ay ataral man kido use alman pepper spray use mbenga wo training ke nyimbankol kan. But make no mistake, itemimbe Germany, itemimbe Switzerland, Norway, Sweden, Spain, France, you know, Italy, and into America, dawda ibe dawda. Poliso na te kang ite mari nyanta kuluo talale ya exercise, ya comply, ya make soko ite song. Because ni man so ibe falale. Ibe furele sambala suokono wala. E fure na mantano suokono itebe bade la banta janne. Amanjarala. And don't make no mistake, friends of the Gambia and the Gambians. Nte manna janka jube jamale boita. Jamale bolota. Na londo e mindin nga minkarang. Gambia Bangkoka ninga minkarang nyim Bangkoka based on security sector. Aka kenyaming. Nka wole falye. Katuko, na ketantela the same thing be wole kelan. Because luale wo ya dada. Luale wo foko. The subject, nini mobe deal kang. O mari needs to be compliant. Anyanta comply. Regardless of bota dawda. Wole mu luati, wole mu sarfroti membe laring. But at the end of the day, coming out for nyamindro. Sentano come ma. So much so that we want to be the hero and on ne walk at a draw, you lose your life. Mol mil baby jikiringela. Puru ke mako ika kuol ke la ye mako iga Africa Banko ka amunta ko la jiko beti nyat. Nga nyenkuo mulunjaw yande bakele. Kaja ko Gambia dingo can go through this process. To die like a dog like this manner. Or to die like a very aggressive human being. Ye bonki dola amanke kese kilinti fula saba nani fo lulu ya juri balokon. Just because it a marry, you could have done things something a little bit differently. But like I said, Jamale Bolota, Jamale Mambolo, that battle would be very, very long. In the sense that nim more fata, a fata nyadile, proportionability and unreasonability in war. For back walk on the bank. Is there an imminent threat? Kajubeko Mr. 𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏 ate a la distant ne wo marrying at the time for wale nyanta ka jarebang kido e bonde ya fa o far nyanyin. Barifo ate 𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏 fanam. Mone a kende beribe a diamundila. Amela mui? Ama wokuo be kuma venke sentano yama fo yakabori kata police ol nom. Womu decision ol te miya lonko mole fama manyanka kata wo daji kasifa nyina because niyake. Like I said, 9 out of 10 ite balula. Because nyim police ol milbe do kula jaye karande walla. Dolu bije, they don't think outside the box. They don't even waste time. So mumanyantala through that. But B, wale akende lafita nala jang to reason out with you people. Kajeko, domestic disturbance call. They are the most dangerous call for law enforcement officers worldwide. Daoda. Ni kumande komenko inila nomonyo dunta nyola walate nila sunkuto dunta nyola ye kumandiroke even hanatara kumandiro nyemanke tonyati police will they still respond to make so ko wo bungo nyinkono safety lebeji ya make so ye diamu both partners all ye katandi la komenko nga call sotole jang a distress call katandi nyinne bekiring la fita ka jube fo 𝒂𝒄𝒏 in order. They come and ask about that. So today's tip deals with the dangers of domestic violence situation and some things that you can do to improve your safety. So according to recent analysis by the U.S. Department of Justice, these calls are not just dangerous, but they are the most dangerous. So in Ata Tandiko, between 2014 and 2016, more officers were killed handling domestic disturbance call than anything else. So, wale hakendi domestic disturbance call, nim police ol bita kanyeka fo ikata kelola. They are going for war. Because you know why? It all police ol fanam fango jama balel kafa a isu sifan yul kono. Ye kumande puru yeta molu kanju dulato, ye fango fa o dalilo kono. So wale akende ni bitaka ikaparela. And they are very, very armed, well armed. Amankenta la Gambia police olte ni tate bulu kensen jang ikatara amrin ebe fenker ebe waraling because ibe balukande. Amia police ol don ni wol betaka ndulato ikafala coming kofo itolu sanji jolle be kuranding saine wulta kurango nyenkono. You know? So wale akende police olu miliela doku wanyinno. Ika katale ka kendi ko ibita daoda yetara parering. But like I said, nobody on this universe should go through anything quite like this. Me along with Mr. 𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏 that he has been killed in the most brutal manner. But like I said, momo video you baby sota rojala video nyinkono. Kaja ko fodong wo aksono ming bekerin je atanyanta ka wokele bang fana manyan ka woke na ma woke komen ko o aksono nyinkon denun biya betar la balurin ntolla kuma kangon na long kango dawo da wala mukatonya balunde anin na londo e min din na kafo kulu kono horomo kono anin ay tara tilindin siratal mustaqima silol ete mari nyanta ka minke ni make doron amulunta ko kasole betar laje. At the end of the day, like I said, nyinkuo bekela a very big legal battle lady, but at the end of the day we'll come to a realization that saratolye millande saya dependala Mr. Lamin Toure ala loyal and in police department of German Polizei. Woleta ye face to face kanying the legality of the use of force, the last resort, which is the gun, ye mim bondi o kuonyin kono. Again, barinka mim for wala mo domestic violence kololu isiatale. So the research also identifies some alarming trends. For example, most of the officers killing occur outside of the home. Firearms were the most weapon used, and rifles were also used a lot. Coming ko police jamalu inika bo ila suol kono. Itolla suol kono wato dolu jamal el kafa mane. Ande kafa odulal milto kafa bantale. Andu manke kuti miya lonko itol fanambe mira kampuru woyeke. The best way to improve your safety is to wait for another officer to, no matter how urgent you want to intervene, to de-escalate the situation. Just like in case min keta lamin torela kuonyent. Ning ayatara police killing ne tataji. O man betea. Bari luwa ye karandiroke minna walam nyentiko. The right procedure nibe respond na katanyin sifalto walam nyentiko. You have to go in 2 pairs. Ka make so ko. Hani korontata nyao nya puruka o situation o nyin safe. Ka dis-escalation o ke walam ka fataroke. Momi ala e muro soto wala e kido soto ala fitaka ala musofa wala ala sunkuto. Inyanta ke batule ye backup soto follow. Because wala mu satra follow ti ye min karande police kundato. Even if the call seems routine, do not assume it is. Kami hana tare kumandiro nyenketa ko ye kumandile nate ya cancel ko ha no nga mistake ko so the police all they still show up. Many of us would know that coming near 911 call tending what's your emergency e kanale e murun na ya fo e coming ko ni ko nga mistake ko ke hani bi ka police all kila dolato le ka jube photo nya to nya o mistake ko the for mistake content because they don't want to assume anything because ya lonne ko sometimes some people might be under hostage situation. Yeah, for near police will call the assailant wala momi ye kidnap o mari ba fole ko call kotenke ya fo ko ye mistake olek. That's why they don't compromise with this kind of calls and they don't assume it is just a mistake. They just go there very ready. Ning ayatarete police o itata dulanyento you have to park at a safe distance away from the scene. Ka make soko and with more and more rifles being used, the probable means farther away than you might have thought. Safely approach the scene when a second officer arrives. Walam nyente ko ite mari ni tata o scene nyento tende inyanta ka jamfa jelale because ba on dolla America ja rifle o lel ka use. O rifle ol nyim wala fango ba kendi la ko inyanta ka jamfaje ba kele fo e backup soto from your this thing. Ke ba sabale nimbara nasi o benyadi fa sen sabal e kontom bake famande unketa. So again ni tata o sin nyento inyanta ka situation o assess le janni be dunna o ko nyunkono. Make proper use of cover and concealment. Ite nyanta make sure le mabor ki e fanna follow. For iya lonko is safe talebe mako ero but yet still you are ready to wait for a backup to arrive. Learn what you can about prior calls to address and about the people who may be involved. Come in near Kumandiroke. Mo eka complain ole diko hey alna ma koy nakamba no le bejanga e kido le muta akabe mfala wala te alna ma koy nakamba no le ay murole soto akabe mfala murole babul. So need a respond to incident onyento, you have to conceal yourself. Bao say yalo murolem. How do you approach such a situation like that? Momi along ay murole sort. Or ning kidolem wala fango ba kendele nyanta ka jamfa because kidi sifa nyadi ya Maria wala sort. Pistol lemba wala den rifle or military grade. Me along it can go several miles at a distance, you know. So we'll be attentive. And if you see an officer handling domestic calls alone or ignoring other safety process protocols, please say something. The unfortunate and uncomfortable conversation is way better than a preventable injury or death. Come in police, kunda fanam fangwe come in for molia wala mnyendeko. Nim momo aje police killing dama kun killing na ku sula kumpanya adamaka respond to domestic dispute call sola or violence call sola. Inyantaka kuma keso file ko. He is doing it against process and procedures and protocols. Wole kumayata dina yabula marieta woto aya fam barama jaw wala teng aifa o kuonyin kono. So wo discussion olo katonya wule fire amari nya kono ka lonko abenye minke kang wo be ala life put kang at a risk le wole bete ata dina yabula je amari thank you. Domestic disturbance call will never be risk-free. And nene buka taraje mi alonko kafoko nte hello sotolaje. Awomu hello le fangote atomu wallet. And also, do what you can to improve your safety. Safety mu number one key component led. And take it always very seriously. Remember, complacency kills. Wala mnyenti koi ikasi koi faya no amanke problem batunga tata kela problem de ni tata woto wo sifa eka mimfo wala mnyenti ko woka mo falek. So a knife attack against a police officer. Mune mu knife attack. Nim moe kido soto because nga mwele kon nanyenka brother mimbe Germany. Ae murole soto abulokon. Andong knife attack against a police officer refers to a situation where an individual used a knife or a sharp-edged weapon to assault or threaten a law enforcement officer. Wala muning ayatara mo mi alonko ay kido ay muro so tabulo kono muro wala mfende mi alonko adanying ameluntale andunga adanying as adiata bakele nae so abe baramala nae kuntu abe baramala. O mari niya mute bulo kono itata police officers kan ka threaten ka life threaten anun ka fay ko mbenyine kelela ka assault wala mo knife attack. These attacks can occur during routine patrols, arrest or emergency response call. Nying attacks solu sekeno wati lale sekeno patrolola during arrest or during emergency call like a domestic violence call. And in the case of Nying Germany incident minketa, domestic violence call lemo. Mi alanko na brother lamini ture, aye murole sota abulo kono, aye muso threaten according to the report. Then wala can the police all nata akangie. So the officer's response depend on factors such as the attacker's proximity. So, nim police obina mo respond la mi along ka muro soto. Atenyanta ka ku dantan nel korosi ay sula roke wal kuola. Mimbe attacking yin na proximity. Proximity wala mnyente ko distano atene wo tema. And in the intent, ate ataka mi muro soto. Ala miral kuwa mumunete nying al halen dingo nying kono. Wala ma lafita munekela muro nyinna. Wala lafita munekela nte poliso nyinna nte minna tata. And the level of threat pose. Aka sangaralo aning tinyaro ming alafita kake. Wala level benyadile. Is it very high? Highly likely? Or very unlikely? Or not likely at all? Wala o sifal dal. As a police officer, you have to gauge all of these things. Proximity, the distance, and also the intent of the threat. So, officers must make a split-second decision to protect themselves and others while adhering to their training and protocol. A police officer may along respond to domestic dispute. Yantaka tarfatay aini. Kuole kela decision oleke ka jube be mineke kan pour que fan tankandi ye mol fanan tankandi ning andung wo tankandiro nyi manyanka kuke mi alonko anyantaka bo lua la sartola anite la department or la protocols and procedure of your training ye minke regarding the use of force. And again, Ninata, Ibajubela, these techniques are designed to help officers create more distance between themselves and a knife-wielding bad guys. Nying techniques olu ke karande menna as a police officer walam nyentiko ke ma ko puru ye sabarin din ke fanne ye saba ye distano bula ning assailant nyimari bala kaje. At the end of the day, momi along kid murole babula aba faikan tenga ka aba soro kelabari, yet still nibe about 80 meters away or 60 meters away or more. The likability pura marie futela at that very juncture is very highly unlikely. You know? So, but then, lua esartro landile ka jubeko. In the first place, mo manyanka jora mota trying to attack a law enforcement officer because ni woketa kumulunja wole kana funta ko nyinkono. So it basically works like this. The officer turns and runs away from the advancing attacker while drawing his or her sidearm. Ning ayatara o kuol nyimfanan komi nyen technique nga mimfo. Lua e karandiro ke anim police training manual o e mol karande minna wala mnyentiko. Ni aje aselanto nata momi alonga e murole sota ya ketengti e nyantaka borile as a police officer regardless of your kidol be sote e fambal e nyantaka borile follow ye fam makoi ye turn around again to make sure that ye ila kido nyimbondi la side armonye to face the assailant ka make sure coming ko ye taraparere ngakam. So bari ngajele ko mo jamal nibe intubawdu. Cultural difference and consideration also work a problem bale cause nin police ol tema. So menyininkala, are there any cultural consideration when interacting with police officer? When interacting with police officer, cultural consideration play an essential role in ensuring effective communication and mutual respect. So, etemi along ko ibota Africa, sometimes barrier in communication. Woka kendele ninin law enforcement officer be deal kang akaje ko there are breakdown in communication or asaken or maybe sometimes there would be prejudice. E se muta coming ko imu minti manke wo fanam fangote. So wale akende nying cultural consideration o la mandarga la da manserolu ala bundalu la fitaka wolel kacha ka jube because ufanan ka kendele mo jama ka dum problem o min kono wala ka baramol mel sotoje e manyan ka soto just because of the cultural barrier and lack of communication system. So follow wala mu language and communication style. Ete mari as an individual including myself be aware of language barrier. If English is not your first language, try to communicate as clearly as possible. Wala mo nyente ning ayatare mang ning angale manke ela kang fo ela fori kang onyente ete mari nyanta ka katale ye diamo e senea mi along ko nyanta ka fo, and it should be very clear. Ete fana nyanta ka understand that officers may use specific jargons or abbreviations. Don't hesitate to ask for clarification if needed. Official dolbeji se kumakan dolu familiar along ko itekela full complete English word salty, but nima mfahamu roke wolto itenyanta kanyini nka arokele. wo kandi kando kono ka jube kominko ila life kana tara at risk. So respect for authority. Different cultures have varying levels of respect for authority figures. In some cultures, addressing officers formally, example, officer or sir, ma'am, is crucial. So, ngalon ne ko da molla kuluru nyambota damel toy mbe mankele, but at the end of the day, ni nataka jube wala mnyenti ko, mo dolu ika officer ibuka afoye officer fam, dol ka afoye ko sir, dol ka afoye ma'am. Wokumayata bakel. Avoid confrontational behavior or challenging an officer's authority directly. Wala mnyente nga min for drone commando. Nim police o na te kama. Ete nyantaka minke, ye submit, ye subdue, ye respect di ala doku oke aita bari. Ni confrontational ta, ye kelo wulindi dorong, o kelo nying, etele kana regreta kono because ite ganye no la nyoli ye jorangol lel sote fambalo bala. Non-verbal communication. Gestures and body language can convey different meaning across cultures. Maintain a respectful posture and avoid aggressive behavior. Wato dolo coming gestures, non-verbal, wali da buka walfot, bari ila body language wala te ila manya, woka kuma jamale interpret police officer la, and ite mari nyantaka minke, ila posture nyantaka ke nyaming, nyantaka alonna be nyaming. Itetar la lori e bulolu kufinyo kantente police oba mutala nyinga kamfata la feta kancha atakle so ite lonya imanya odulalto imanyang aggressive gesture kala wala tem behavior. In some cultures, direct eye contact with authority figure is considered disrespectful. Be mindful of this. So, wala can the cultural difference and barriers work at a big problem. Because nyimban kolkan, tonya in the Gambia, ninin kebal besiren pur kenya bula kebal nya kono molka muta wo mukulu balialadi. Bare nyimban koka ikalla file ni be diamule nya ni nya etarabule nya kono. Because ni alnyal keta nanite alyenyo jube karanjamale kakewo kono bari. Nim tol botanang Africa, nim poliso be diamola nyenga nya jimintente, maybe tol it ba mutala kominko mankuluo dila, manghoromo dila, mambunyadil. Ayataran tol dun na Africa dun. Kenya bula kebal nya kono wala molu milia lonko ye authority soto. Womu kule tinkaje kominko anin kulo mantara lari nyobala. So all sifal dal, mbeng hakilol tulawal nya, wala na cultural awareness is very important. Attire and appearance, dress appropriately when interacting with law enforcement. Avoid clothing associated with criminal activity or offensive messages. Ebe fengol men dunne ya katabake. Enen kukana mulung milia lonko ise enen criminal la dum feng nyal lel kamulung wala teng abe message offensive message ol tandila mol. Cultural attire or religious garments should be respected. Officers should be aware of cultural diversity. So wala kende ni ayatarete mu hijabu moleti ye hijabu do wala bay wo bay dung wo nyanta ke police nyanta ka wolon na dron because police ye train cultural diversity inclusion fanan cool nyenna. Understanding policing practices, research local policing practice and laws. Some countries or religions have unique approaches to law enforcement. Wayatande coming ko ise research ke bake policing na lual nyilbel naring anim dula dinkira mebe woto banko dolu aning regionals dolu wolu ya jele ko ifanal ka police all treat with respect and dignity andong ya lon law enforcement official anitol tema ye very good rapport soto. Be aware of community policing initiative or cultural sensitivity training program. Kami wo training all ka diversity le nati kaje ko ntol be mambodula kerem bari be benta janne mo min bota China anin do min bota India anin do min bota in Africa ani mimbota America ni wol benta dulato daji ka jamal lel be manifest la o dula nyento mi ya lonko ite kala kilinde so wala kende police oli ke karandi diversity and inclusion na kaje ko ise hakilo tu o fanal mil fanam fang emergency numbers and procedures walam nyenti ite mari know the local emergency number like in America here 911 tolka wala command and how to request assistance ni be dewo kono ise wo command wate police ol bina andon na yimbankol kan police ol response time is very impeccable ni commandiro nyenke anila futa wato nyi kamutala ko nyabiti nyayelo ise futa naila la fita o si fale tara Gambia banko kan ka jube ko police ol e joran kendol soto kela do kol ke komi nyanta ka kenyami understanding the process for reporting incidents or filing complaint against officer coming like I said if I were Mr. Lamin Toure, ning ayatra sentano mamma back and se min keno wala mnyente ko mbe submit lale nga police ol batu yela do kuoke ning iman treat with respect and dignity I will file a case against them ka jube coming ko lua nying yen stereotype le wala kule ken na mi alon ka manyanka ke you know so amanke wati ka mol milifa police response la wallel boita wato dol bije police ol fana e ka mol fale recklessly just like that because of some things going on in their head so wale akende akwonying niya samba at the legal official to abekela batul balati to verify as to who was right or who was wrong rights and legal procedure. Familiarize yourself with your legal rights during police interaction. These may vary based on cultural norms and local laws. Idemari nyanta ke fang dadale, ye fang londi luala, e fang wala nyantolu, police la kuo nyena ning ayatare ni be interaka. Andung aning police lualu, aning banko fang wala lual nyena tente. Ani la tundo ibe damim fanan. If you are unsure, politely ask the officer about your rights. Ni me la nyanto long, police o nyening kaite la nyanto monete. Abe la nyanto read lane. Sometimes wala tina ni e muta. Eka for you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you do not have one, the state would provide one for you. So, Wolbeka for do you understand this right? Yes, for yes. And you have the right not to even talk to a police officer. Senya jama jamalen nata janka jubeko nining police interaction o soto ye nyanto lel soto to kadiamae wale nyanto soto not even to talk to them. Ese o nyanto soto ka for ye kominko lafita diamola na lawyer lady. You know? Wol be nyanta ke mu kuti tol milialon ko betu bawdu be nyanta ka karanne kaje ko nse kamfa nyaaw mu nyanto le timbe laring mota busino lambulo kono em police en na nyanto nyentinya nse nange su court bare niye kube kuto ke drong akana masibo le fontene mialon ko akake ku ngulu njawolde fear and trust cultural experience and historical content influence how individuals perceive law enforcement. Etemari be ebota damin to cultural experience. Second way bad experience so in police or la fenko. So nite police or je wala cool setara kuyaring asa akende ku ke mi alonko akuo maslanda. O manyanka ke emari nyanta ke hakilo to ka tandiko police or be manketi ku be mantara ku kelinda. Some communities may have a deep-rooted fear of police due to historical events. Officers should be empathic and understanding. Modol bije kasilam bake police olla because he bota dami. As a keno maybe wol bota kele banko lelto. So ni police olje wol nata nyimari akasilan silanya minke amanke kwa ay kule ke min manke luati bari. Because of a bad experience means to odulato police o ya muta coming ko sifa. So I come in for police o le wala mnyente ko akumata le purite marie o kuo nyemfaham and ye balafa soto o ku sifalto. Community policing and outreach. Encourage community policing effort that bridge cultural gap. Community policing wala police ol nim molu melbe tundol kone bulol di nyola purka do ku ke ka make sure ko yin cultural barrier sol tending wolo ye talano damandindal. Officers should participate in community events, engage with diverse population, and build trust. Police olu enyanta kadum mol konole dulal milialonko with heterogeneous population. Kajeko baonda mamantarjang African ol bejang, Asian ol bejang, Hindu ol bejang, all over American ol bejang, European ol bejang. So wolu police ol nyanta dunna wo population ol kono wo community ol kono wo tundo ol kono puru ene wolla signalu ise nyo katano ye nyo moino kuol bekela nyami ka je komin ko ye lanna ya nyin bambande yebe na jara obela do ko finansoni and implicit bias and stereotype. Both officers and civilians may have implicit bias based on cultural background. Police ol ning more civilian only based in certain ole ka bias ka stereotype ke based on it all but a daminto coming near bad experience of the police ole in Japan ni nata jang eta mutala coming ko jam police ol fanam be mo kurungo lati hani tarako jam police ol wol kendol be kono as a kano police ol fanam be jam milia lonko ye bad experience of the more dollar in Africa in Zimbabwe ni wol nata jang it all fanam better law stereotype and bias lete andu nim police ko muntako o man better because more man killing depending on your bad experience of the damel. So nyembe mimba fokan remember that police officers receive cultural competency training, but it is two-way street. Respect, open communication, and cultural awareness contribute to positive interaction between law enforcement officer and the community. So even ajala nyembe ba foka wala mnyente ko sila fulalam. Mo be nyantaka bu nyale di nyola horomo anen law enforcement officer pour ka je komin ko yela do ko ke nyantaka ke nyami. So bawo nga fole ko sanyi nga jube if an attacker is armed with a gun, the situation becomes even more critical. Here are some guidelines for police officers facing an armed assailant. Nim mo ya tarai kido soto o mari nye nyantaka mune kenwal. Walam nyendi you assess the threat, stay calm, maintain composure, and focus on the threat. Evaluate the distance. Walam nyendi proximity. Determine the distance between you and the attacker. If they are within certain range, take cover immediately. Observe hands. Attacker nying abulol jube wati. Pay attention to the suspect's hand. Look for any sign of firearm. Ka jube for kidole babulo konoba. For murole babulo. Technique fulanja wanyeng walam nyentiko. The tactics for for armed suspect. Verbal command. Ni moy kido so te nyanta kaminkala. Verbal command walam nyenti. You issue clear verbal command for the suspect to drop the weapon. Hello, this is the police. This is the German Polizei. Please drop down the weapon. Drop down the weapon. We want to make sure that you are safe. And the person in that room needs to be safe too. Do you understand what I am telling you? All be verbal command level. You know? Use a loudspeaker sometimes with an authoritative voice. Ka commandi. Ka jubeko you are in charge. You know? Cover and conceal. Nibe wokekang, you have to cover and conceal. Seek cover behind solid object. Example, a wall, a vehicle, to protect yourself from gunfire. Ningatara mari kido le sota nimang fenke drang amulunta ko ase kido soso ikannewo. Maintain distance. Keep a safe distance from the armed individual. Avoid getting too close. Because ni isuti abata je ni mole mi alonko ay rifle le soto na e bundiro ke drong ase manole. Backup. Call for backup immediately. You will need additional officer to handle the situation effectively. Backup wati. Police o nyantaka olone for his safety and the safety of others. De-escalation. Attempt to de-escalate the situation by talking to the suspect. Buy time until backup arrives. Wati dol bije, ese diamo suspect nye, ni alonko kidole babulu. Ka distract demanding, puru ka make so ko ete backup min kumande puru wose futano ila ka jube. Wodi amundiro kono, eba kono to diakan ne ka jube, ay kido landi, aya fan jube, isa nyenen kay dingel le soto dingol be nyaadi le coordinateur la yo si fal ka make sure ko ye fem fa mi alon ko be connection o nyin divert la te be action o minke kan pour ka afan tora ako nyin kon wati dolbiji police ol mili alon ko ela doku no baake they get successful e ka mo nyin bondi wo crisis situation o nyin kono yena ay kido landi ayela banko to yena ya arrest and womo sifal jama ni ajube maril sulata de marolla because mental health issue womo something very reality in this world mol dol katara crisis situation okono minka tuye je wala myendiko ye famfa anila kanunte molu be milbe dala ye wol fanam fama be fa ku manjarala dal wala yakende molu nyanta kanyin training nyimbeke momo be dawda counseling and in guidance and in mental health training. That is a very, very profound and very important thing. Police all need tala, community need tala, and in subjects all mili alonko they are attacking people, they need it. That's why na do kuol kono nka wolke bakele anum ni mol engage bake, you connect to them, they see themselves in you. So ni intervene taka di escalation on yinke, you get successful based on amanke ko imujino leti bari. You have to relate to the somebody member crisis situation on your puruka bondi no what. So the use of force continuum. The use of force continuum, police obedawda, army obedawda, molu security officer bedawda, mo be nyinkaran. And then you kulete mi alonko asoneata bake, wato dolun safo kwa mansonea. Katuko the use of force continuum, ake karande munna level 1. I level also from level 1 all the way to level 4. So, ninyi momi alonko ate kido soto. Kido le babulo kono. Ite nyanta kamuneke. Your mere presence may deter the suspect. Walem level 1 te, officer's presence. Senya jamalen nata jang, like at that time, Mbegande police officer lelu kono to diaka nying use of force la. Ela crowd control ika ke nyaming ika cool minke je tol they jump up from level 1 to level 4 straight away. No, police doku ya nyako ya ofele o manyankake. So level 1 wala mo officer fangoy na ay tara lorinje kadiamu molie. Mili alon ko be demonstration o kekan. But be me men discourse ka wala mnyenti ko momi alon ko kido le babul. Ete officer ila taro fango je damma. O ka akendile wo mi alon kido babula ya ala cool by. Level 2 wala mnyenti verbal command. O verbal command nye itebe minkela issue command to drop the weapon. Ebe follow suspect wala ten the assailant nyeko this is the police. Kindly drop the weapon. Because nimmoy kido muta. Wala nimmoy muro muta. Ateka muta la kominko atelebu authority to sign. Because atemari he feels or she feels very much empowered. So o empowerment o mimbe nakang. So ateka police o jele police o mimbe nakang o lafita o sembole busila abulokono. So it is all about power and control. Mol milka attacking ke. Either with a gun or with a knife, nim police or nata, ateka fanje another level letter. You know? So, the verbal command, walam level 2, you issue a command to tell the person to drop the weapon. So, level 3, less lethal force. Remember, nyemil baby for contenting, walam nyentiko, use non-lethal tools like a taser or a pepper spray if available. Walam level 3. Bari, unfortunately, wato dolka soto nyelubeka usele, ebuka subject so ataka nying, ebuka convince no. You know? Munta ko setan ye all maril no back. So level 4, lethal force. Walamo, as a last resort, use lethal force, which is the firearm, to protect yourself or others. Remember, from level 1 all the way to level 4. Womu time jama bale fanguti kadiamu ite mari la force physical present level 1. Level 2 ye taraje ka diamu ka fo monyi ay kido jolong amamoy yena less lethal force level 3 either ye pepper spray use or ye batono use or ye taser use womu level 3 fo amawo fanambe moy yena to the last one, because at this point you feel that the life of the person me alongo alafita ka o ayo kidnap alafita ka o mantora ida kidole babulu wala muro ya jubele coming ko ni man kuke amulunta ko ase o mari fanam fano wala tenga kudo eke wala akende you use that lethal force. But there are always implications ning ayatare lethal force used, because that is the last resort. The buka police karoundi wala ka for coming ko, you have to use it. That is the last possible force. Ela fite ye minke. Ela fite ye ning 4 level, ning 3 level ol be exhaust follow. Ela katakuola and ela ferol. Ning amanna sotono den wale alaya lande wale nyam. So, another technique beje wale firearm disarming technique. Disarm from behind. It's a more arrest no, yeah, disarm from behind. If you are behind a suspect, control their arm and redirect the weapon away. It's a bulol control no, yana ye ila jorang nyimbondi. Disarm from the front. If facing the suspect, create distance and redirect the weapon. Ebe nenkido be bulol lakono. Etebe imaril talale ye kido nyimbondi kono. Ebe kido nying eba redirect lali afo kido nying ketending. Then after yena ya table. Two-handed techniques. Use both hands to control the weapon and push it away. It's able to ya kido nyinta mari bulo kono ya push away. But nyil isul be, they are very dangerous. Because nyimim be ka ketending, it's like a split-second decision. Remember, the priority is officer safety and protecting innocent lives. Always follow department policies and training protocol. The decision to use lethal force should be a last resort when all other options have failed. So, coming bottom fokang wala munyent. So, again, finally, mbe mimfola, is killing a suspect an appropriate response to a knife attack? Fodung kamofa wo nyanta kake kute miya lonko mbe sonna lale ning ayatare tata makoy rola kamo makoy puru aibo knife attack nyinkon. Just like in the case of in Germany, mim fataje, Tore. You know? So the appropriateness of using lethal force in responding to a knife attack is a complex and highly debated topic. Momi alon kido murole babulo abe mol threaten kampura abe baramala wala sefa womu kuti mi alon ka ko kole abata puruka diam, because atedal moli different ideal lel soto akuo nyinkon. So law enforcement agencies worldwide have varying guidelines and protocols regarding the use of deadly force. Law enforcement officer be dawda dunia kon woliye miral ku jamal lel soto miya lonko kafo the use of force ibe sembo nyi use la puruka mo nyin the subject nyin ka neutralize. So nsina jube follow wolmu muneti ning ayatara mo tataka respond ke with firearms and mo tata respond amari kido nyin soto. So level force one on muneti walam the use of force continue nga wo fojanning as senator said. But most police departments follow a use of force continue, which outlines a range of responses based on the level of threat posed by the suspect. Ning ayatare tata or responsive. You have to be able to use a range of responses based on ete cool minje ebe takan ebe kekan. So itela use of force nyanta lala wo cool lel nyinka. The continuum typically includes verbal command, physical control techniques, less lethal options such as taser, pepper spray, and lethal force. Officers are trained to escalate or de-escalate their response based on the situation. So, nin level will be near jube, official ba, either it has to go up or it comes down, depending on the situation. Abe nyamin dal. Imminent threat. Wala mnyente ko. 4. Sangaro beje wala danger beje le miya lonko. Before force ye apply, wala te minya can the force nying apply ta for imminent threat nying beje. Nim moy muro muta. Akabe poliso solal. Wala te ngay poliso attack. Is that an imminent threat? Puru poliso e kido bonde aye juru signal lulu puru yefa. So, lethal force is generally considered appropriate when there is an imminent threat to the officer's life or the lives of others. Wala minyentiko, lethal force a mukule timia lonko isontala ning ayatara poliso nying atela balu nyala safety and the safety of others while they are at risk. Wala ta poliso sekido bondino ay mobung ayafa. If a suspect is actively attacking with a knife and pose a serious risk of causing death or serious injury or bodily harm, officers may use lethal force to protect themselves or others. So luala stamandir nyabe wala nyama ayatandiko ning ayatara momi ya lonko abe official attackang aning muro anu official nyingming abe attackang muro nyina ya mirako ase baramarinya sangara keno wala mi ya lonko ase faro fanke itolla wala teng asa kendiko ay baramo kila baramo mi wajabita bake wala teng official se kido bondino ya bung ya fa at that time ke fam protect andun kamol fanam protect ni mukula te mi alonga discussion te diala bari nyulla musilote police doku be dawo da dunia kono yen karandi nyinala ye mol be karandi walla mili alon koy be ACI fanam mu police olti ye fanan karandi nyinala wala can the use of force continuum I mean for jang police all mil be ACI the same thing the use of force continuum ya wala foy. Proportional response. The response must be proportional to the threat faced. Ning ayatara moy kido mute bulu kido le bete fanambulu alafita ka mo bungala, then that would be very proportional. Ite mari se a neutralize ya fa fol. Puro akana mol dol fa saka se ite fa wala e mo jamal famal fa o incident nyenkon. If a suspect is armed with a knife and is actively trying to harm someone, officers may use lethal force as the last resort. Nim momi alonko murole babulu. Aba kata kangabe wakililin pur kanaka molu barama wala tenka baramar jauka mola minsa kendika pur mole fa wala e barama e mantora. Officers may use lethal force. Walam the proportionate response. Proportional response walam minimum what? Ndama nyemfo luale yafo sartol le yafo mandargal le yafo. It is like I said, it's very unfortunate that Mr. Lamin Torre afata nying alhalol to tentem but kam molel akilo bulande puru mbese karang nying alhala si falto ka kendi la nyanta kuwa muminti nyanta ka minke nim polisol nate kam because nyil falta under a category mi alonko ni koy ba kala drum police so they can use the last resort which is the firearm ke bungala kefa. The escalation and alternative walamo ka sabarindir ke kudol la wala se ise kudol keno minse morning asa juso fano ka apondi wo mantoro kono alafita ka minke mola wala tenga lafita ka minke ite police officer fanam fawla wala te lafita ka momin barama isa bondin o situation o nyin kono by de-escalating or using other alternative. Officers are encouraged to de-escalate situation whenever possible. Ye karande o fanana ka make sure that them do their best ka cool de-escalate. Ni man wo no walto ikata up to the last level 4. Non-lethal options such as verbal commands, less lethal weapons or physical control techniques should be exhausted before resorting to lethal force. Nyinkwol be coming out for no nyaming is a non-lethal force usually like verbal command. This is the police. Please drop down your weapon. We want to make sure you are safe. Nama wol be moy physical control techniques ni se wono. But nima wono all this level 1 to level 3 abe nyantaka banne janung you use the last lethal force wala muka kido taka bunkafa. Training and judgment. Officer or officer be daoda inyantaka training sotole and the training sota cool nyinla. Officer receive extensive training on the use of force scenarios. Ka jubeko itebe force sifa nyadi lekela. Nim momi e fitara muta wala ten doko. I watch ka be busalala. O doko nying, you have to look at the size of doko nying. O doko nying, inyantaka jubelo o doko. Niem busala, ani niem busa fitarangola, fo bem fala le bang, wole nyanta kada de, wala atinna proportionability and reasonability wo ya sambana. Because ni tata lua nyati lengula lua ka wolel jube. Ka jube, okay, mimbe yo muro doko nyimuta, amari la mengo be nyadi la alhalo be nyadi le, na nina tata man to man, fo aben no la juna le bang. Wale akendinte o jorandol use la. This is the last resort me use la. But it will raise more question again ka tande molla ko. Sanying muro mimbetable wala dokole bebul. Let's take a stick for instance. Nimmo dokole bebul fo jari talabang yekido te ya mari bungala. So dokola size ning iba jubela. Ete mari la size ila intende anin distance ning. If it will be jubela le ya gauge ka jube for police or a best judgment use lebang ka jube anyanta what force of continuing the use la purka subject ni neutralize. The judgment is critical in assessing the immediacy and severity of the threat. Pamimbota wala fokante. Nyinkuo beka ke tarfata aino lel kono aka taria kandole ke. Ka make soko mola kuol nying ahe peteano judgment call beje miya lonko split second decision ola kakije. Split second decisions are made under extreme stress and officers must consider the safety of themselves, colleagues and the public. Now for the banta already. The lethal and ethical consideration. The use of lethal force is subject to legal scrutiny. Ni tata foye kido bondiye mo fa. War legal battle, that case is not small war. That's why as officers, as civilians, nobody should go under that circumstance or condition. Kajeko itemari, you subject yourself to issues for inata yefa. Because if an role bejele as a civilian to comply to the police, to make sure you let them do their job the right and the most dignified possible way. Because sometimes, most times, the police work under very extreme, difficult circumstances. And decision making, akakoleada. Remember, these are the police that sit on the coal to make sure that we go to bed safe. They protect our lives and properties and make sure that they go after the bad people to make us to have a safe and peaceful environment that we have. So, akwajata korosirola back. Officers must be able to justify their actions based on the circumstances at the time. Like in the case of Mr. Lamin Torre, the brother in Germany, a 46-year Gambian immigrant. Ya lonko ya bung. So now when they go to court, the judge has to sit and say, was the action reasonable and more proportionate for the police officer to draw a firearm and release 5 bullets in his chest? It will be a very interesting legal battle now. We'll see what happened. But if I were in that scene of that issue, I would have done it differently. I would not use the gun though. I would try to either run away, close to run away, and come back and try to de-escalate more and more and more. To make sure that to ensure the careful moment the crisis situation so that we ensure safety between both of you. But it becomes a problem. But again, the ethical implication of taking a life are profound and weigh heavily on law enforcement personnel. Kajube puruka mo niota o mukule de mingu warama bati andong police officer fango e kamasila mbake o kuonyina andong anila do kuonyinko. So kanyimbe summarize me memfakan wala mnyentiko. While lethal force may be appropriate in certain knife attack situation, it is always a last resort. Come in lethal force, near kido bonde purka mofa, in some instances of a knife attack, they are appropriate. Luaya landi wala nyawa. Ne moye murota, in some instances, Puruka be molu baramalala wala be kukela mola minse baramari masilandinkela puruka abondika te fanamfa. It is always the last resort. Wala muku labangote official ibe da for ibe China le, ibe Asia le ba wala for ibe Africa le. That's the last resort for you to do. Officers are trained to prioritize safety, de-escalate, and the preservation of life. Officer la do ko mu momenti mimu nyenko kono wala mu nyentiko ka kuolu nyala tombong nya kono mi ya lonko the most out of the rest, the best out of the rest ye wo tombong puruka kende tanko aning safety ani tanko ning tenkuo wo sabati ise jusolu nyabonde ka jusolu munyande ka make soko ye de-escalation okay puru isu mimbeke kan amanyanka bo at that level I talk to the last extreme level and don't obe ni aje be eka obeke wala muka make soko hadama de wala nyanto anala balunya diala anyanta kaminke. And remember, the decision to use lethal force is never taken lightly and is subject to thorough review and accountability. Near mofa, a farinya keta nya whether legal Taliban wala man legal, a baker review le with andung accountability barake. Make no mistake, ale demaning ala me dema na ketela ningatara ne luamanta, then etemari you are screwed. It means ko imari luala nyanto ay memfo abe mutalal katung hadamani niyo manyankata o nyama tende. So, nying international human rights laws wali munefo ka for coming ko the use of force continuum. The international human rights laws serve as a global legal framework that regulates the use of force by law enforcement. Polfane bunyan dirike o kuo nyin na lekata ndiko use of force nying anyanta ka regulate le ay jube ay kenin silo la silo mi alonko beteat ane lua la silo. Its purpose is to prevent arbitrary, excessive, and discriminatory use of force and to ensure accountability in the cases of abuse. International law liate kantine kominko use of force nying tilimbalia kolengo manyanka dunga kuo kono ka force nye use excessively mi alonka masilanta tamita nane fanan ano imanyanka more discriminate ni be force nyinka e lafita ka make sure ko abe kala nyao nya abe tara lari lua kan anin kuluo. Several key international standards have been developed over the years. Walem Code of Conduct for Law Enforcement Officers. Law Enforcement Officer Ibe Dauda, adopted by the UN Assembly in 1979. The code emphasizes the dignified treatment of all individuals. 1979 UN General Assembly afundinika tandiko hadamadi ibe nyantaka treatle with respect and dignity. It requires officers to use necessary force and to do so in accordance with the principle of proportionality. Coming out for after coming ko officer le law ni use me along ko is necessary force. Ano na kela proportionality wala mnyentiko ise kunna takinyola la ka foko ni moy dokoba chika abe officer attack tende o dokoba nga expect la kona landed officer nyinka sa ngote inole o ba kendela more justification ko ye kido ta ya use ka amari neutralize. So the force applied should be proportionate to the incident mimbeke kandal. The basic principles on the use of force and firearm by law enforcement officer. The principle provides guidance on the use of force and firearm by law enforcement officer. Emphasize the need. Olfanambe ketale kuokono by international law. They emphasize the need for necessary, proportionate, and accountability. Coming all bay for officers should justify and justly. Officers should justify each use of force. E nyanta makes all alako ye meo menke ye kido bondi meo men ne nyanta ka justify and rules governing force by the outline in the national legislation. Aning Allah maralo lual nyul benyame. And United Nations Human Rights Committee General comments fanayatandeko. The UN Human Rights Committee has issued the general comments interpreting the international conventions on civil and political rights. But in summary, the international standard emphasized the importance of balancing law enforcement's duty to protect public safety with the fundamental rights and dignity of individuals. So niya jube nyul fanal bela wala nying convention wala kuol bebe lari nyame wala kuo kunya mimbekela anyanta keke aning kulo kono aning bunya. So what are the legal implications of using lethal force? So the legal implications of using lethal force vary significantly depending on the jurisdiction, circumstance, and applicable laws. So example of those will be self-defense law. Most legal systems recognize the right to self-defense. However, the specifics can differ. Right to self-defense bedawdale bari e fatata bakele. Stand your ground. Ofana mukute mi alonka keke. Some states allow individuals to use lethal force without a duty to retreat if they believe their life is in danger. State dolk America jang stand your ground lo albejan emilia alonko. You can use a lethal force ning ayatareya believe ko ila life is at risk. Duty to retreat. Other states require individuals to attempt to retreat before using lethal force. State dolbe nyimbanko kaya jube ka keko. Ilafitale ye saba koma dormande ye bori koma damande januibe lethal force useless straight away ka monyimfa. And another technique, Benjamin alonko reasonable belief. Lethal force is typically justified if a person reasonably believes they or someone else faces imminent death or serious bodily harm. Ya believe like a lethal force say use no kula ning ayatarete mari belief ta wala teng ya believe ko modo lu whether itelemba wala modo ala life wala is at very imminent threat. puruka baramari sangar kala wala tenkafa nin wo sobita ete mari nyantaka o mari fale jannat ka faro folo. The reasonable person standard is often used to evaluate whether the belief was justified. Comme inata nyembe nyimbe ke la belief nye. Wa ibina jala fo ila belief nyimbe ya fenke wo reasonable taliban foto nyalembang a justify taliban wala akendi use. And again, proportional response. Lethal force should be proportionate to the threat. If a non-lethal option is available, it should be used. Lethal force dauda ajantaka proportionately. Coming awala fo. Doko nimmuro. Nimmoyo ochike kama. Is that a more proportionate standard ka jube ka value ka gauge for wale ba kendele kido bondiya mari faba. Nimmoy fitara muta. Akabe lipalala ekido te ya bungala. That is not proportionate because fitara ni oye busa. Abe de minnalde. Barate fanola. So omanke more reasonable response. Amam proportionate. Purka amari bun kidola. Bari nim moy kido muta akabe mo bunnala. Wala jorangota muruba. Wala te muroba bulokon. Akabe solala. O fanana instant sol defatale. But at the end of the day, that would be more reasonable point ka jube ko you use a lethal force ka o mari neutralize dina momi e fitaranta akabe lipala. Disparity of force. Consider factors like attacker size, strength, and weapon. Komite mimo police officer. Ninga atarete mo keso tungote nyendo munjolo te abalo be farimbake. O disparity in force inyantaka o jubele. Attacker la size ni. Ala strength be nyadi la waro nyadi le bala anin kidi sifa nyadi le bala wala tenjoran sifa nyadi le babulokon. And law enforcement. Police officers have specific guidelines for using lethal force. Graham versus Connor. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that officers must use force based on the totality of circumstance, considering the severity of the crime, threat level, and suspects as such. Coming the legal enforcement on Yenia Jube. In the U.S. here, Graham versus Connor, yeah, tande komenko, ye force me use the tenting the officer as a force me use based on the totality of circumstance, considering the severity. Coming koning dangerous tanyami, a wajabi tanyami, anin crime minketa, anin threat mimbe fundikang, anin suspect na action on him. In investigating and accountability. After any use of lethal force, there is an investigation. So in Germany, this lethal force may used against Mr. 𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒔. Investigation will be akela. Internal Affairs, Police Department review the incident. The Police Department of Germany, the German Polizei, will also review the case and Kajube for. Is it proportionate and is it reasonable, Kajube? Why did that officer use the firearm against Mr. 𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒔? Civilian oversight. Independent bodies may investigate also. Prosecution. If deemed unjustified, criminal charges may follow. Ning ayatra police officer e kuo minke aman justify andung aman proportionate wala munyente ko sign criminal charge would be conferred to that police officer. So the Castle Doctrine. Some states extend self-defense right to homes and vehicles. No duty to retreat. In some states, individuals can defend their home without retreating. You just shoot at them instantly. And the trespass. Civil liability. Families of victims can file civil lawsuit against the person who used lethal force. So in the case of Mr. 𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒔, alamolu ning ayatare ya feel coming ko ye excessive use of force like ya bon ya fanyin kokon. They can file a criminal lawsuit for civil liability ka jubeko the force was not proportionate and it was not reasonable. You know. wrongful death claim, seek compensation for loss of life. So ninga be natake ya bula miran killing, niya nata ya jeko ya fale fari nyala miya lonka ambetea, you can claim for compensation. Training and policy. Officers receive training on use of force policies. Like I said, official bay training sort of qualified immunity protects officers from personal liability if they acted reasonably within their official duty. Qualified immunity kaminke wala mnyenteko. Ning ayatara nyem police officer ming be German police mi lamin tore bunkido nyina. Ning ayatala ala doku nying is reasonable and it is within the law officer's duty. Ay faro minke ideni ebuka kuke amari nyina. So at the end of the day, friends of the Gambia and fellow Gambians, remember, this is a complex legal area and seeking advice from legal professionals is crucial. Laws can vary significantly, so understanding local regulation is essential for anyone, whether a civilian or a law enforcement officer. But make no mistake, I hope this serves as a crucial learning curve for all of us, wherever we might be living, to rethink about our actions, our interactions, our behaviors while interacting with law enforcement officers, because our life depends on it significantly. Bemim foka wala mnyente ko nyinko mimbebe keri nga jikeko nga nyinkuma kongol mil be fojang abekela karandere kulati ntol be nimbe nyentu babudu bankol kang kajeko na aksonolu na manyalu na kekuolu anin na daji kolu mbe kela no nyadile ning ayatara nim police officer be dilla ka jube ko o kuma ayatale ka korosi bake ka tuko na balunya wala na saya abetu kuri wole bala oto mbadi Gambian call friends of the Gambia ala baraka bake. My name is 𝒂𝒂𝒏 United States of America. Ngal betentu ngal jayi na kumaka minga fojang dolti diala molie bari luwa ya landi tenne sartol ya landi tenne manna janka diamu ka ajube ko ka foko jamale boita wala jamale mamboy na intention of doing all of this wala muka more sensitized about things that they should do while they are living in the diaspora. Most importantly and especially ni in law enforcement officer come in contact anatake arrest wala anataka diam. The best course of action in yantaka minke is to comply and keep yourself safe. Allah baraka baki.